Welcome. This is Steve Shadrack, founder of Support Raising Solutions. This podcast is part of a 15-week series launching your first 100 days after boot camp. Today's episode is hosted by our friend, Aaron Babiar.
Our guest today is DeNail Sparks, who's with Every Nation Ministries. He's actually been on staff with them since 1993, and that's also when he began to raise his own support, and he is fully funded. And now DeNail is the MPD National Director, Ministry Partner Development National Director within the U.S., which represents about 300 U.S. staff. Now, Every Nations does have stuff out in the globe beyond the U.S. borders, about 1,500 actually. So he does have some coworkers that do similar work to him. But DeNail, I understand you also travel sometimes globally to do some of the trainings.
That's right.
So as you have trained personally, ballpark 3,000 missionaries so far, I got the feeling you'd be a good guy to bring on and have a conversation today.
I hope so.
Well, I know you have some coaches that you work with in the U.S. also, but specifically, as I think I told you before, a lot of people that are listening to this, they just are fairly new to raising support. They might have gone to an SRS boot camp. Maybe they went through a different training through a different organization. Maybe they went through foundations, or they just got a hold of a book by Scott Morton or Steve Shadrack and decided to look for a podcast and they found this. So we don't know everything about the people that are listening to this, but we do send out an email to those that graduate from the SRS boot camps. And typically those people that get this and they're listening to this podcast, they've been at it for not quite 100 days, or maybe right at 100 days. Depends on when they got the email. So they're probably hitting that point where, man, they're flying, or they've plateaued and they're wondering, well, I guess this was for other people, not for me. And I counted on being fully funded in 100 days and I didn't get there. So maybe I just shouldn't do this. And you and I both know that there can be some discouragement and there can be some
absolutely
aptitude or desire to give up. And I know as you've seen that over the years, particularly the people that have started out gung-ho, they started to raise support, and then it's not going so good. What do you do? What do you say? How do you dig into that? And maybe just tell us a story or give us an example.
Sure, that's a great question. One of the things that invariably happens when you enter into this kind of race is that there comes a point when you say, I should be there by now. This race should be over by now. Or why didn't somebody tell me that this was a marathon when they told me initially it might have been a 100-yard dash. It turns out that it's a marathon. Yeah. And something that we tell our staff, first of all, is that they didn't come to a training to perform a process. They came to a training to learn and grow in a lifestyle. And lifestyles don't occur overnight.
Sure.
And so, first of all, we encourage them and let them know that this is part of the process.
Okay.
That once you get on this road, once you begin this race, that things may seem further, but if you stay on the road, you'll eventually get there. So there's actually a missionary I spoke to just recently who, once I began to share with them that God had them, that the Lord put them in this process, their perspective began to change because they said, okay, if I'm not in necessarily a program, but God has me in a process, the next question that was natural was, then what is God doing in me while I'm building my partnership team? And as we begin to examine that, she began to mention how her faith has changed, how her faith has grown, how her endurance has changed and grown.
Because it had to, right?
Because it had to.
Yeah.
She learned that her skin had gotten a bit thicker, that the Lord spoke to her more often regarding his plans for her future and beyond. And so as we began to unpackage it, we began to talk about the bigger picture, the process, and how that God is a God of process.
Yes.
As many times as we want everything now, serenity now, peace now, money now, there's a process that God puts us through that deals with our fears, it deals with our insecurities, deals with our pride. And so one of the brief studies we can go over is King David. He was told, you're king, you're going to have all this.
Right.
But He was given many opportunities to give up on the dream or choose shortcuts to that dream that would have ruined what was in his future.
Yeah.
It took him years to get to.
Absolutely. It was a long time. It wasn't like it was the next day he had the coronation ceremony.
That's exactly right. And so that's one of the first things we do. And I'll say it this way. I remind the person, I ask them, what's your dream? What did God speak to you before any of this happened?
Right.
Before you went into ministry, before you came to a boot camp, before you came to a training, what was your dream?
Yeah.
And then I ask them, do you still have that dream? And then the next question I ask them is this: what are you willing to do to accomplish that dream?
Yeah. Yeah.
And once we start going through that list again, many of them are reminded, you know what? I may be struggling right now, but I'll be glad when I get that dream.
You know, you bring up an idea that some theologians would call sanctification. And it's that process of not quite there. You're there, but you're not quite there because you are in process.
That's exactly right.
I've spoken with a lot of people that have raised support that when they were fully funded, they looked back and they said, hey, I know this sounds kind of silly, but this is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life because I had to change.
That's right.
And what is it? And I'm sure it's more than one thing, but what are a few of the things that you see changing in the support raisers? And maybe it's not until after they plateau. Maybe it's not. They kind of hit that wall and they start going, oh, maybe I should give up. Maybe I heard somebody else's calling and it just got the wrong voicemail box or something like that.
No, that's good. When I was a kid, my dad would take me camping, and the particular camper we would rent or use had 2 gas tanks on it.
Okay.
And he knew he'd fill them both up. But there was a point when we had to stop because we ran out of gas. And the process was he had to switch valves to the next tank, and the tank would get us there. The second tank would get us there.
Okay.
And what I found is that many people who enter into the MPD process look at what they bring to the table. Look at the context they've brought, look at the process they have, look at the strengths they have, the talents they have, and that tank will only get them so far. And in this process, when they run out of fuel, there's a process where I believe God causes them to switch tanks.
Oh, nice.
And their faith changes.
Yeah.
They begin to siphon off the fumes of the Word of God. They get the fuel of the faith they need. They get the vision and the dreams and what He told them.
Right.
And so when they get onto that tank, it's as if the whole vehicle of their life has changed, and they go further, faster, better, because now they're not depending upon their own strengths, their own abilities.
Right.
They're depending upon God. And what I call is that there's a sacred trust moment that occurs. And that's what I love about the MPD process, is that you're putting yourself in a position where you have to trust God.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Christianity, trust in God is optional. It really is.
Yeah.
But in the MPD process,
shouldn't be, but that's kind of how people approach it sometimes, because no one's there to, give accountability to force. They don't know what's going on in your mind. They don't know in your head. And we as parents, you have kids, I have kids, we can try and raise our kids to love the Lord, but at some point it's not my faith.
Right.
It's between them and Jesus. And I cannot force that.
Exactly. It's
similar.
It's got to be birthed.
Yes.
And it's there's an analogy I was thinking of just last night in a different scenario, where as if we were a skydiver, God asks you to jump out without a parachute and says, I'll take care of you. The moment the battle is everything you do before you jump out of the plane.
Right.
Once you jump out of the plane, it's free fall. There's only 2 options. You're going to fall or fly, one or the other. And I think there's a point in MPD where you're going to fall or fly. And you have to determine to fly, but you're only going to fly as you trust with God, as you lean on Him, as you speak of Him, as you step out by faith. And so one of the first things I ask people to do, I ask them this, is not just are you praying, but do you have a prayer team? Do you have people around you who are interceding, who you can confide in? I'm not talking about complain about, the difference between confiding and complaining. Sure. But you can confide in them and say, look, I have 5 appointments ahead of me today. Here are the people that I'm going to meet with. Here's what I'm believing God that will happen. By faith, I'm going to ask this person for this amount, that person for that amount, this person for that amount, and I'll broadcast it to these I have about 10 prayer partners. I'll broadcast it to them, and they will call them out by name. They'll pray for them, and then I report to them what happened. And now that I've already done that, I'm accountable to them.
Sure. Yeah.
DeNail, did you ask for the amount that you said you were going to ask for? Did you do what you said you were going to do?
Yeah.
And to this day, I haven't gone back to them and said, I chickened out. Oh, it didn't work. You know, what I said is I asked, and this is the answer that I gave. And I see their faith go up as well.
Yeah.
The next thing I ask them is not just do they have a prayer team, but do they have somebody holding them accountable?
Good.
Somebody who says, look, you may not feel like making phone calls or going on appointments or researching names or brainstorming again, but you need to do that.
Yeah.
When is that going to get done? Set a deadline, set a time, set a date.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Earlier in our conversation, you had said something. What was the question you asked them when you sit down with somebody who's struggling? It's like, do you still feel called to do
What's
this?
your dream?
What's your dream?
What's
okay.
your dream?
All right. That is foundational because if they're murky on that, the rest of these questions they're
matter. Completely irrelevant.
They don't matter. And I think as you know, people that might be listening to this might be at that point where they're wondering, do I need to give up? Do I need to make a change here? That you know, what's your dream can be really, really important for them to be clear on, because if all of a sudden their dream is changing, and it's because of the budget. That or lack thereof? I mean, unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because, you know, some people begin to make their foundation shallower and shallower when their dream isn't deep in them. And one of the things I tell them, I said that people can tell what you believe. And I ask them their dream to really hear what they believe. And actually, we've done this before where people would come to our training. And if they start sharing a dream that isn't their dream, for instance, my pastor thought this was a good idea. My friend thought this was a good idea.
They're borrowing their dream.
Exactly. I let them know point blank, you shouldn't be here. Because when you wake up in the middle of the night, when you wake up early in the morning, when you're staring in the mirror of yourself, and you're asking yourself, why am I doing this? There's going to be no other voice in the room but yours.
Yeah.
And if this dream isn't yours, if it doesn't echo in your heart, if it doesn't pull you out of the bed in the morning, if it doesn't compel you past your fears, then you might be living on somebody else's dream.
You know, not everybody has the exact same experience when they have that confirmation from the Lord, but I remember where I was physically in a field in the middle of Arkansas, like driving a truck, like going to feed the horses. I can't remember what I was doing, but I remember where I was and having a sense of this is a non-negotiable.
That's right.
I have to do this.
That's right.
Not because God's going to love me less if I don't or something, but this is my calling. It's going to be hard. But it's my dream.
That's right.
It's what I have to do.
Exactly
it's a matter of obedience.
Yes.
Is what Marky and I talked about. It was just like, this is what we have to do. Oh no, it's not going to be easy. That doesn't mean that's not what we're supposed to do.
That's right.
I remember those conversations with my wife at that point.
That's right.
So
and something I also encourage people to do is gather people around you who are going to encourage you with your dream. They may not see it the way you see it. They may not understand it the way you understand it. But getting in an atmosphere of faith where they're going to back you up, they're not going to speak down to you. They're not going to down your dream. They're not going to question your dream. They're just going to challenge you to rise up and go after it. That is essential.
Yeah.
It doesn't even need to be, it can just be one person. You know, Jonathan did that with David. You know, Jonathan had no interest in the process. I mean, the throne was Jonathan's.
Yeah.
But he encouraged David to pursue his dream.
Now, the flip side is someone who's listening to this, they might not have spent time or be spending time with people that are quite that encouraging. In fact, there might be some discouragers in their life. And we're not saying to, cut everybody out of your life necessarily. But I know that we want you to be on the same page as your spouse for sure.
Yes.
But outside of that, there's sometimes people that can speak into your dream and it's not healthy and it's not good. And I mean, I won't name names, but I had a family member say, Aaron, what are you doing? Very early on. And it was a gut check moment because it's someone I know and love that didn't get it. And I still know and love that person, but I had to go, that's probably not the person to be around in this process because they're just going to keep throwing water on my fire. And I just don't need that right now.
Right. And I'll even make a distinction. It needs to be somebody that encourages me in my dream, but doesn't carry my dream for me. Sometimes there are people who they'll encourage you so much, you're going to them as your source. And I'm not saying that's not good. I'm saying you need more than that.
Yeah.
You'll need to have your own dream. And you're right. I had to, just a quick point in my story. When I came to know the Lord, I had to break off most of my relationships. They were not healthy. Oh. And so by the time I entered into the process where I had to build my team, I was using a phone book. To this day, my partnership team are A, B's, and C's. And so because I had to pick up a phone book and start dialing and calling and writing and
you really had to push reset on who are the people God's going to use to partner with me in this.
So when people say, hey, I don't have any relationships, I said, you know what? You can make relationships. Yep. You have to build them.
Yeah, which is work. Yeah, it's not easy.
And my leaders gave me time. They challenged me. They encouraged me. But, when they saw I was using a phone book to do that, they backed me up. They said, okay, well, how many people did you call?
Boy, they knew you were serious at that point too, didn't they?
I was serious. That's exactly right.
Serious. Great.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about resources for people that are plateauing. More than once, I've heard of people going through training a second time.
Absolutely. That's a must.
And they're saying, I was ready for some of that time
That's
one.
Right.
Time two, my heart's ready now. I need all this again.
I'll even speak to that. I've been married 23 years, and my wife and I didn't figure out our marriage by ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so for people who are married to the ministry, they're not going to figure that out by themselves either. They're going to need encouragement. And so to sit in a training, and this is what I've done. I've sat in multiple trainings. I still do. I go to trainings in different ministries just to hear again the spark and the why, to refine what I'm saying, to refine what I'm doing. It's made me better every single time. And I encourage anybody, if you can go to a training, even an SRS training or a training that's local or a training that your ministry puts on, go to it. Yeah. Don't let pride keep you from sitting with the freshmen again.
Right.
Sit with them and learn from them. Because sometimes, I've learned this. I've stolen a couple of my lines from people who don't know what they're saying because they say it very well.
Isn't that the truth?
It's amazing how I've had to tweak my script. I said, that's a great way of putting it together. Can I steal that?
Yeah. Can you say that again? Hold on here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm coaching you, but I might need a little help on this one.
I like that. You just condensed the major paragraph for me. And so,
well, you know what you're modeling in that. I mean, first of all, you're helping yourself, but honestly, the humility I think that is necessary.
It takes that.
If you're gonna say, I didn't quite get there yet, I'm called to do this, but I got to keep filling my mind with the right stuff, be around the right people. I might need to press reset on that things. That's not weakness.
That is, I played football in college, and what I've learned was that every year the athletes would have to go through 2-a-days or 3-a-days or some kind of boot camp where they went back over the basics again.
Yeah.
And you knew who the good athletes were, but you found out who the great players were because the great players said, I'm willing to go through the basics all over again. They remaster the basics. So the freshmen and the seniors were doing the same drills.
It's just humility.
The coaches and the freshmen were doing the same drills.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like reviewing the basics. And it's funny, even today, you can watch, even the Super Bowl that just passed by. Some of these plays were made because guys didn't do the basics.
Right.
Instead of making the tackle, they went for the ball. Instead of making the tackle, they tried to make a hit to knock the guy out of bounds. And that's, the basics were tackling. So just by way of example, in MPD, you have to stick to the tackle.
Yeah.
Stick to the process and remind yourself, almost a spiritual muscle memory, to go back to the basics again and again.
Some ways to do that, I know, are getting training, but what are a couple of good books out there that you suggest people read or reread, or maybe get the audiobook version of, or anything like that?
The God Ask, obviously, is one of those. Funding Your Ministry.
Scott Martin's
Blind
book,
Spots also.
Also Scott Martin,
Friend Raising.
Betty Barnett.
There's a whole different other books out there, but I think, matter of fact, I believe this is true of Christianity. Mastering relationships. This is a relational funding model.
Yeah.
And if you can learn how to go beyond yourself and master the building and sustaining of relationships, that will take you a long way. One of the generational items that we deal with also with those that are struggling in the MPD process is that some of our younger missionaries are reading cues that tell them no when they're not no's, they're actually yeses. Their fears are speaking for them, and they're gathering an answer from their fears and not the relationship.
Interesting.
And so many of them don't press through the way they should. Just by way of example, sometimes there's people I meet with and they hesitate. And in my younger years, I took that as a no. And, I can end the meeting and not ask any further questions. And now I know better because I have nothing to lose. If I leave the meeting and they don't join my team, that's one answer.
Right.
If I leave the meeting, but I've prodded, I've poked, I've asked, and they still don't join my team, I've lost nothing, but I've gained valuable knowledge and experience in the process. And so I'm learning how not to leave anything on the table and anything undone. But that comes with practice and time.
It does.
One of the things I talk to our new missionaries, especially those who are on the edge or plateau, and to talk to the veteran missionaries and find out the plateau moment is common for everybody.
Oh, all the time.
That many times they think it's uncommon. It's just me. Something's wrong with me. I'm doing something wrong.
No, it's normal.
And it is normal. They
Not
all
everybody
come
hits
to a
it, but
plateau.
most do, don't
most
they?
come to a plateau moment.
Yeah.
And like
by the way,
I said,
just parenthetically,
sure.
When? Like what percent? At what point?
You know what? You mean how many? What percentage?
What percent of
happen?
the support being raised does it happen?
Usually at around 50 to 70%.
Okay, I would off the top of my head I would have guessed 40 to 60. So you and I are kind of right in there. It's where they've achieved enough success to know, oh, hey, God's really doing this. Right. But then something happens. They might have ran out of the context they wanted to use.
Right.
They might have developed some bad habits. Different things like that. But there's something about we've got started. And it was working, but now it's not working, so I'm just going to abandon everything.
Where I found is some of them are realizing like for instance, when they're building an initial team, the people they're meeting with are giving them a grace that strangers wouldn't. So their initial list is filled with friends and family and associates that already know them.
Right.
So now, skipping out on parts of the ask and skipping out on parts of the presentation, it's okay because they know me, they know where I'm from, they know what I'm doing.
Right.
But a person that they've never met before, who's never heard of the ministry before,
they're missing an important communication piece.
And so they're thinking, I've shared everything I've shared in the past and now it's not working, when really they're not sharing the whole vision. They're not asking the whole question. One of the examples is we found that some missionaries, when they go out and ask the question, it's really not a question.
Yep.
It's really not a question.
I've seen that before.
They're making a statement.
Right.
And the other person is picking up.
It would be great if you joined my team.
Yes.
Vague.
Would it be possible for you to, only if you feel like it, to really stand with me?
Yeah. They almost undermine the invitation.
Or they don't ask for an amount.
Yes. That's a big issue.
They don't ask directly. They don't ask for an amount. Yeah. They don't wait for an answer. They don't trust the Holy Spirit.
Right.
It's an easy out. You don't have to decide right now. You don't have to think about it. Maybe, or they leave it vague. How about I call you back, later?
Yeah. Right. Instead of being specific.
The urgency is now gone.
So really people need to continue to pay attention to their process and their communication and have clarity as to what they're asking, as well as when they're going to follow up and not undermine themselves and not give people an easy out.
Right.
We're not trying to force anybody to do anything, but we want to be clear. It's an invitation to be a part of the Great Commission.
Absolutely.
You're invited to be a part. That's so much more clear than, if maybe you could kind of sort of.
Something else that we ask is where they've plateaued.
Yeah.
Have you plateaued with your contacts? Have you plateaued with your phone calls? Have you plateaued in getting positive answers and partnership, or are you just gaining prayer partners? And we'll examine that process. But one of the things, let's say specifically they don't have contacts. Go to church with your partners.
Yeah.
Let them know what you're going to do. Ask them to help you in the process. Go to church with friends and family. Ask them, let them know what you're going to do.
Great.
And that way you can almost reinvigorate your list and start the process all over again, fresh and new.
Great. Well, our topic today has been about not giving up. and not only just not giving up, but getting better.
Yes.
And improving yourself, improving your process, seeking the Lord. And so we're thankful for those that are partners with us, aren't we, DeNail?
Absolutely.
Because we don't know some of the people who are going to be doing this, but they're our partners. We're trying to do this for Jesus. It's not about you and me. So,
exactly right.
DeNail, it's always a joy. I appreciate your friendship. Thank you for sitting down with me today, and God bless you, my friend.
My pleasure. God bless.
Thanks for joining us. We encourage you to listen and subscribe to the SRS podcast that answers questions and dives into topics relevant to ministry partner development. For more resources, browse our website, supportraisengsolutions.org.